Thanks, Jeff. Morning, IX. How are we doing? So I'm Andrew. That was a good response. Enthusiastic response. So I'm Andrew. This is Philip. We're here to talk to you today about from socially intelligent business to socially intelligent research and what that means for innovation. And I'm going to start with showing a picture of my beautiful wife standing here, not in Kevin's fantastic party that he was talking about, but in a building site. She is project managing the renovation, if not the rebuild of our house back in the UK, while also single-handedly having to move our entire family, yet again, from another house to a flat above a friend's garage, because as you can see, it's not ready. And what am I doing? I'm here with all of you. I have abandoned my wife at her most important hour of need. And when I was, enthusing about talking to all of you about how to be socially intelligent, you can imagine the stony-faced look I had in response. Andrew, that's not very social. I don't think you're being very intelligent. What we realised by what I realised by telling you that story is and why I wanted to share that with you is because we are so worried about that we're not going to be able to move into our house that I'm using technology to tap into the skills and the goodwill of people in my local area to help us finish our housing project. And everywhere you look, you can see in business that we are tapping into what we call social capital. Consumers are doing things that companies had previously paid their employees to do, whether that is getting consumers and customers to help deal with other consumers or customers' issues or complaints, like Telefonica are doing with their new mobile platform called giffgaff, the mobile network run by you, whether it's getting consumers or customers to help spread stuff to their friends or their peer groups, like a major drinks brand that we helped recently. They started with one superfan to help generate 1.5 million views of their advertisement on YouTube before that the ad went live, and that was in 1 week. Or whether it's getting consumers and customers to help create stuff, to co-create, which we've seen in the previous 2 sessions. All in all, companies are realizing that success in the pull economy means that more value is now being created outside the walls of their company. And in this much larger ecosystem of participation, of dialogue, of innovation, of big data, all the great things we've been talking about here in the last 2 days, one thing is key. The consumer, enabled by technology, is key to all of this. And that is why we believe in establishing a knowledge framework that can help companies maximize as much value from this social universe as possible, while also driving more meaningful experiences for the customer and the consumer. We call that knowledge framework social intelligence. It is an open, collaborative, continuous, adaptive, customer-driven knowledge framework that sits at the heart of everything a company does. All the major business disciplines flow in and out from the network consumer, and technology and all of us as smart people, we are obviously vital enablers, making sure that we don't just look at consumers as transactions, but we look at them in terms of relationships. And from a marketing and brand perspective, social intelligence is all about humanizing brands. It is about helping brands to understand the role they can play as social entities in people's lives, and more importantly, in the relationships that people have with each other. And that's why we believe that socially intelligent research has a big role to play in helping brands and companies be more socially intelligent by informing their behavior with a more holistic view of the customer, helping them to be more human, more social, more people-powered entities. And I'm going to hand over to Philip now, who's going to talk to you about what social intelligent research means from an innovation point of view.
Thanks, Andrew. I've got 9 minutes and 45 seconds left, which was planned. And I'm going to try and talk to you in that 9 minutes and 45 seconds, quite ambitiously possibly, about co-creation, communities, crowdsourcing, and social media data. So wish me luck as I kind of enter this world. And I think the starting point for this story, and kind of having sat through this conference, and as a researcher starting out 15 years ago, is it's literally kind of mind-blowing when you think about all of the data that's out there, all of the interactions between consumers and customers that are going on, and this must be the age of consumers who are more listened to and more watched than ever before. And we've heard kind of all kinds of crazy statistics around that. But what's really interesting about that is what does that mean and kind of how we apply it. And I think another theme of this conference that I've seen is really around speed. And I think one challenge that the industry is facing as a whole is the need to make more, better decisions more quickly, rather than trying to make perfect decisions more slowly. And I think the research industry has always been quite bad at that. It's trying to help businesses make perfect decisions, but taking a long time over it. And we can't be in that situation anymore. And human beings are actually quite good at making more decisions very quickly. And we use social intelligence to do that. We use our understanding, our contextual understanding of situations, our instincts, our empathy, to make a lot of very quick decisions, most of which we get right. We don't waste time trying to think about making perfect decisions. We make a lot of decisions very quickly. And humans are very good at it through social intelligence, but research hasn't necessarily been that good at it. And I'm going to give a few examples today about socially intelligent research and how socially intelligent research can help businesses make those quick, just good enough decisions very quickly, rather than trying to make perfect decisions more slowly. And there's two kind of broad things I'm going to talk about. And one of those is around new ways of sampling social media data that helps us understand consumers in a bit better context. And I wrote a sentence on this slide, what sexy metadata means for innovation. And if you'd said to me as a qualitative researcher 15 years ago that I'd ever write that sentence or even have a clue what that even meant, you would have thought I was mad. And the other thing I'm going to talk about is really this idea of combining social media data in a more synthesized way with some of the things that have been talked about in the previous presentations, communities, crowdsourcing and co-creation, to create an integrated, holistic view of the consumer. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about social media data and putting data in context. And one of the big things that we've seen a lot of in this conference is around social media data is that it's not about what's being said and the process of measuring what's being said, but it's the analytics and kind of analytic tools and what we do with it. And I think one thing that we're trying to do as a business is to help organizations think about social media data a little bit differently and to be able to apply that to innovation more effectively. And the key thing we're trying to do with our own social media listening tool, which is called Pulsar Track, is to look at social data not just in terms of what's being said, but specifically in terms of who is saying it and who they're saying it to and when they're saying it. So we're sampling data not just by topics and keywords and that we already know what to look for, but actually looking more holistically at specific groups of people. And to give you an example of that, we're trying to move away from thinking about volumes of data and counting and what the conversation is, and move it more to this right-hand side, which is to understand specific groups of people. So what are mums saying? What are foodies saying? What are fans of our brands saying, people that are following our brand saying? So rather than thinking about it in terms of what's being said, we're thinking about who is saying it and who they are saying it to. And that's quite interesting when it comes to innovation, I think, because one of the reasons why social media data has been quite hard to get into an innovation process is that up till now it's relied on asking questions and looking for things that we already know about. It's looking for topics that we already know about, that people aren't necessarily talking about that much. Whereas we know that innovation comes a lot from lateral points of view, from adjacent categories. So by looking at social data, not in terms of keywords and topics, but in terms of audiences and who are saying things, and listening to all of the conversations that a particular group or audience of people that we're interested in are saying, whether that mums, whether it's foodies, whether it's fans of our brand, we're able to get a much broader, more holistic view of those people. And this is part of the zooming out process, start to get much more inspiration for innovation by understanding these people, understanding the context that these people are living in, rather than just listening to the very specific things that they're talking about. So that's kind of part one of what I want to talk about, this idea of creating a holistic view of consumers through listening to social media data in new and different ways, not by topics, but by focusing in on very specific audiences. Now, getting a holistic view of our consumer through social media data is one thing, but actually really understanding people and really understanding them in context means that we have to think about them not just in terms of their networks and how they're connected to their networks, but actually as real individual people. So we're looking to combine social media data with more qualitative techniques, whether that be online communities, or it be crowdsourcing, or it be co-creation, and bringing those together in more systematic processes. And this is what socially intelligent research is all about. And this is what I mean by a new type of continuous research. It's this kind of integrated process that funnels down from the zooming out process around social media data and listening to the crowd that we're particularly interested in, through to actually starting to engage those people through some of the techniques that have been talked about in the previous presentations. One thing that I think is really interesting about this, and what sampling social media data by audiences allows you to do, is it allows you to create a very consistent view. Because what we've had up till now is where social media listening has been disconnected from qualitative research, which samples in very particular ways. When you're talking about doing co-creation, or you're talking about a community, you're going to be thinking very much about mums, or foodies, or fans of my brand. But the social media part has been disconnected from that because we're sampling it in a different way. And what we're trying to do is to sample the social media data so we get, let's take foodies, a focus on foodies all the way through the process. So we start by listening to what foodies are saying, what they're talking about in and around our category in terms of snacking and how, for example, and how they talk to one another. And then actually bringing those foodies in to a more structured collaboration through some of the communities that have been talked about, and then actually meeting those people face-to-face in co-creation workshops. And there have been a couple of great examples of that given. But as a qualitative researcher who works with social data and communities and in co-creation, I think one of the most fascinating things that you find is when you've been following a consumer online through a community and listening to what they're saying online, and then you actually meet that person in the flesh, you suddenly have a much richer human understanding, not only of who they are, but of all of the things that they've said before. So this idea of kind of compounding and funneling down and actually following the same people through this process, through the social media conversations into a structured community and into actually co-creation sessions, is an amazingly powerful way of innovating with the same group of people with a very strong audience focus that starts by zooming out and then starts to zoom in around a very specific business issue that we've got. So I think it's fascinating, and I love the possibilities that it brings of being able to integrate social data with qualitative research. And I think that the industry has been very bad at doing that, but that's what is at the heart of social intelligence, that real kind of human understanding, and being able to understand people as individuals, as groups, as networks. I'm going to skip over the next couple of slides just in the interest of time, because I want to try and just bring some of the things that I've been saying to life through a brief case study. And I'm not going to talk into a huge amount of detail with this, but we did some work with Klondike, which is a well-known ice cream brand here in the US. And Klondike were looking for new product ideas effectively. They have a big fan base online. So what we did in this process, which took, I know these is always the question, 5 to 6 weeks in total, was we started by identifying Klondike fans in the online space and listening not just what they were saying about ice cream and not what they were saying about the brand, but what they talked about in broader snacking occasions, what they talked about doing in those moments when they were sitting on the couch and had their feet up in front of the TV, and what else they were eating and what else they were snacking on. And that generated a bunch of need states and interesting analogies and adjacencies for the brand. We then built a crowdsourcing platform where we invited fans of the brand to come in, using those snacking need states that we'd identified in the social space, and to come up with suggestions and crowdsource ideas. We came up with 3,000 ideas in that crowdsourcing process. And then finally, the final part of this was we actually brought 16 of those people into a 2-day collaborative co-creation session, similar to what the guys have kind of been talking about here, to actually develop some of these ideas and build concepts and so on and so forth. And we then actually went back to some of the original crowdsourcing people to test and get responses from those communities. So that led to a number of different outputs, one of which is going into market this year. But anyway, my point about this, and I know I am out of time just on this final slide, is really this idea of being able to work in a very holistic way with a very focused group of people, all the way through from the breadth of social media to structured collaboration to co-creation, in a way that builds context and understanding around that specific audience as we go through. It enables us to do things quickly, and it enables us to stay true to the insights and the context and the understanding of these people in what I think is a socially intelligent way. That's it.
So we have, we'll bring you a microphone if you would like to ask questions.
Can we?
In the back towards the right. Wait for the mic. Wait for the mic.
Just a quick question, probably a stupid question. What's the process how you pick those 16 people?
So the process for picking the 16 people?
Yeah, like in that example, yeah.
Well, essentially, it's more like an American Idol audition process, really, than a recruitment process. So effectively, the people that have contributed to the crowdsourcing apply to take part in the co-creation. There's some online screening. We get down to around 50 people, and then we meet those 50 people in smaller groups to give them some co-creation tasks and activities, and then that gets down to the final 16. So it's effectively an audition process.